Hello. It is 5 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order for the March 23rd special called meeting at the district office. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve the agenda.
Do I have a second? Mr. Satterfield. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries 5 to 0. I will say that Miss Snipes is on her way, and Miss Barnhart will be joining us via virtual in executive session and when we come back into general session. All right. Do I have a motion to enter executive session? Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make the motion that we enter executive session to consider the following: A, legal advice on FY21 procurement examination report, shown in Exhibit A and B, and B, legal advice on procurement examination and consulting Phase 3 report, shown in Exhibit C.
Do I have a second? Mr. Scully, any discussion? All right, I will call the question. All in favor? That motion carries 5 to 0, and we will break for executive session. All right, I am calling our general session of our special called board meeting on March 23rd back to order. The first thing on our agenda is the action agenda, action as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. I'm going to just open it up. Do we have any motions from executive session? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to the discussion agenda. I will say that we did receive legal advice in our executive session, and we are about to hear and have a discussion on our procurement examination and consulting Phase 3 report for the first time in open session. So the board is going to listen to the findings and recommendations, and we will address all further matters relating to this report at a future meeting. But we wanted to make sure that we heard information on this Phase 3 report in public. So we are here on that, and I believe that we will receive a finalized Phase 3 report, and the district intends to put this report on our website when we receive that report. So I am, if Dr. Ross, if you want to comment on that, I will let you do that, and then we will open it up and we will begin our discussion.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board and our community, we have with us from JAG, Audrey Harmillo, to bring us our Phase 3 procurement examination and consulting report. And as presentations are customarily presented, we post those online after the board meeting. So we would ask, we may not get it tomorrow, but soon thereafter it will be posted online for the public. So at this time, I'd like to extend the floor to Audrey Harmillo.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, superintendent. It's great to be here. And just wanted to review with you our final draft of the Phase 3 examination and consulting report. So just a reminder, it's been approximately a year since the district did procure JAG to perform these services and look at procurement for FY21 and as well FY17 through 20. And so with that, we have, looked at different areas of risk and interest to the district, and then provided our findings and recommendations for you all in the hopes that you have a valuable roadmap for the future to be able to take recommendations, examine risks and things like that. I know I've mentioned that the district has already made great strides. So superintendent and CFOs, you and the teams, of course, have already taken much of our advice and moved forward with policies and different areas to make improvements, and that's just a normal part of what we do. So even though this is not an audit, officially an audit, it still is something that hopefully is very valuable to the district for the future. So let's go ahead and get started in the report itself. Just a reminder, we are not legal counsel, so we always refer you to discuss with your legal counsel. We do not give a legal determination on the district in any way, but we do take a look at controls and compliance, and like I said, come up with any findings and recommendations that we have for you. In this phase 3, we do focus on procurement, P cards, various payments through the accounting system, and the 2008 bond referendum, and temporary substitute services expenditures. So first off, in procurement, in the first section, you can see that we have a few procurements that we took a look at. One was the animal sciences barn and had some recommendations there. Another was Thompson Turner Construction. For that one, we did determine that they appeared to have met the contractual delivery of summer services for Thompson Turner Construction, but just to strengthen the process, we recommend that the district officially track this compliance measure annually, because at least 60% of the work was to be delivered or completed on or before August 15th. So that's just a reminder for future years, just to make sure that it is something that's being tracked and reviewed in a more formal way, but it was not out of compliance for that part that we could see. There was another facilities study, not specifically approved by the board, and so for this facilities study done in 2019, where the minutes of a particular meeting in March of 2018 showed the board gave a vote giving permission to the superintendent to advertise, but then the subsequent meetings do not show a vote to approve the actual contract. So for that, again, we're just recommending develop a tracker so that anything that the board asks for in the future can be tracked and ensured that that's in the minutes as being approved at that later date. For procurement staffing, we believed, at least originally, that the district was perhaps understaffed in procurement, and changes were made there as well, and adding another person to the team. So just want to recommend that the district keep an eye on staffing. And the district did have over $365 million in capital assets as of June 30, 2022, and over $287 million in expenditures for the same year end. And if you all do in the future pass a bond referendum, that's going to ramp up the activity significantly. So we're just recommending that you keep an eye on the workload of those in procurement and ensure that maybe even a contract specialist or others that you could add to the team as needed. We do recommend that the procurement committee stay active. The board trustees, of course, have intractable fiduciary duties, including oversight, transparency, and accountability. So we recommend keeping that active and maintaining a construction or facilities capital projects advisory committee. And as well, we've brought this up in the past, and I know the board has discussed it, but we still recommend, of course, your internal auditor reporting to the board of trustees through an audit committee. And I think you're on your way to that, so good work. As far as change orders, again, we're just recommending oversight on change orders and ensuring that everything is brought to the board in accordance with the newest policy. Temporary substitute educational services. This was a big area that had quite a few areas of concern. So for example, and the district does not have this vendor anymore. So this is all looking into the past, as most of our work has been looking way back in the past. And like I said, many changes have been made in the past couple of years to move things forward. But anyway, with that clarification, the scope services did not agree to the procurement because there were charges other than substitute educational staffing, and the rates, some of the rates were very, very high. There were some rates paid over $500 per day. The rates charged in some cases were not on the procured schedule. The contractors for the services to the district themselves, positions and rates which were not on the scheduled bid were unapproved, or evidence of the approvals were not provided to JAG. So we did look through a lot of information trying to find those approvals by HR, and did not see many of them. The district did pay for these temporary services without purchase orders, and they used direct payment vouchers. And of course, that increases the work in using temporary services of the return to work violations. Kind of a lack of oversight is what we noted on the temporary services. The district really didn't seem aware back then of how timekeeping worked in the software and what controls were in place to ensure there were no ghost workers. Let's see here. What else did I need to share with you on that part? Estimates were pretty much way off. The intent to award to this vendor estimated $10 million over 5 years, but the actual costs far exceeded this estimate. There were instances of contractors where employees were switched over to being a contractor through this vendor, but they were not temporary in nature, and the job descriptions did not always agree with what the person was performing. So in conclusion, we're just recommending that you continue to implement proper controls and approvals over billing rates and payments, and establish rigorous procedures for monitoring employee timed work versus charged, including the contractors, and ensuring that there's multiple levels of review by management and designation of sign-off on that. HR and finance separation of duties and communication. And so for this was just kind of some general, not that there was necessarily any violations or anything, but just that we have been asked to look at these specific separation of duties and communications. And so we provided some advice on this section. And basically, the CFO should approve HR activities that have a financial impact on the district, such as budgets, perhaps final approval on payroll, compensation, compliance efforts, and just working closely with the HR director. But most of the time, the HR director will have all of that research already completed and done, and the CFO should really be focused on just anything that has a significant financial impact. Next, purchase orders. So in purchase orders, we are recommending to ensure that they are rolled forward each year as needed. So if the services are continuing on each year from one year to the next in the district's GL accounting software, they do need to be rolled forward. The district is aware of this and working on this problem with the software company to ensure that if they need to roll or not roll, that is handled through the software, along with some training to ensure that is done. We did notice some blanket purchase orders and some direct purchases. Direct purchases are those without a purchase order, which is problematic because you can't really track where you're at on budget, and there are less controls over direct purchase orders. So for example, the temporary substitute services were paid, I believe, just from an email to one person in accounts payable, and then that person would just directly pay it. But there was no audit trail for us to really see that, hey, here's the budget, here's the invoice was all approved, etc. So keeping an eye on direct purchases and minimizing those as much as you can. We did test teacher supply reimbursements, and happy to report that we didn't note any issues there at all in remaining in compliance with state law. And procurement cards as well. We took a look at those and followed up on our phase 1 questions that had arisen from the P cards. We also followed up on testing the IRS Form 1099s. And for those, I do believe there were some that were issued that may not have needed to be issued, and then some that were not. And so we're just recommending to go through the accounting software has a field whether the 1099 is supposed to be issued to the person or not, or company, as the case may be, and ensure that all those yes, no's are correct for that particular type of business. And so I think there's just a little bit of internal audit, maybe cleanup for that process to do. Making sure you have all the W-9s too is a good process for that, to compare the entity type to know whether or not you need to issue that 1099. We also followed up on vendor and employee addresses, and so that was another risk area that the district had us look at. And so we did duplicate address testing, and again, we did not find any direct concerns or non-compliance in this area, but just wanted to report out to you all what we did find. Even if it's positive news, that's good. So we just recommend implementing a matching system to maybe, again, do a little bit of cleanup inside of IV and the accounting system and track that into the future. Just kind of monitoring is the way I would put it. And if you do end up with an internal auditor, that can be one of their routine checks that they do is, hey, do we have vendors and employees with the same address? Just to ensure that there are no fraudulent or erroneous payments going out. In the course of our work, we also did note in the system a $1 million payroll entry in the system that after quite a bit of research and work, we were able to determine that it did not appear that $1 million was actually paid to this employee. So that is great. And it looks to be like a situation that had occurred because of the software update to IV. And so that was way back in fiscal year 2015-16. And that additional pay miscellaneous of over $1 million did not look like it was a payment out to the employee, just an amount in a salary schedule inside of the software. So just wanted to clarify for you all on that. We involved a lot of people on this one, and we just couldn't see anywhere where the amount had actually been paid out. The 2008 bond referendum, now this area, you all have been dealing with this for quite a while, and so we just did what we could to try to answer questions for the board and took a look at the referendum itself and the language on the referendum. We did see, the AG opinions and read through those, and of course the determination of whether a particular bond referendum is misleading is a factual determination that only the court can decide. So again, we'll refer you to your bond counsel on that. But the bottom line is that there were projects that were paid for with the referendum funds and some that were not done because other projects were over. And as well, there was some commingling of funds within the 2008 referendum funds, where there were transfers in from other capital projects, some investment income used and bond premiums used, which the district's bond counsel did say was acceptable at the time. So, but you have the details here. We did test many journal entries and just wanted to point out that we had noticed, I think it's probably in phase 1, that there were a journal entry range of about 100 journal entries that we couldn't access directly. And again, I think that relates to an update in the system. So we tested what we could in the journal entries. Luckily, the district had scanned many of them. And so we did test journal entries for the bond. You can see on page 21, there were transfers in and out relating to the bond. And so we just scheduled that out for you to see the usage of the funds. There was 8% bond funds in there as well. And for the project testing, we put together a schedule for you so that you could see exactly how much was spent, how much was budgeted originally, and then how much later was spent on the projects. Overall, of course, it's just for the future to be very cognizant that anything that is passed by the voters, the funds, the proceeds from the sale of the bonds must be applied solely to the purpose for which the bonds were issued. And also, as part of that, making sure that you don't spend any bond funds for operational expenses. So we did take a look at legal expenses and charted that out for you. And also there were costs charged to the bond for in-house personnel that we recommend that you be careful with that on future bonds. Millage calculations, we addressed this a little bit in your regular audit, just the regular external audit for FY 22, and made a recommendation there. But we scheduled it out to see the charts of the different years and the changes in the mill rates. And again, recommended that a sinking fund may be necessary and that the district work with their bond counsel determine if the sinking fund amount should be included in the millage calculation annually or only in the 2027 calculation. In testing the bond funds, we ran across a large $320,000 payment to an egg company, and so as auditors, we go, what is this doing in a bond fund? So it turned out to be stream mitigation costs that were valid, so we were able to confirm that yes, the district did pay for these restoration credits, and we had to go through quite a few different entities to get that answer, but we were able to get that, and it appears to be valid. The in-house personnel costs I mentioned already, but just again, working with your bond counsel to ensure that if somebody is charged to a bond, that it's kind of the same concept of not supplanting. And so you want to make sure that that person was hired and only solely working on the capital project itself. And many times, maybe it's the actual construction or something. I know there can be oversight, but again, it's kind of a legal question to be really careful that you don't have operational costs being charged to the taxpayers over, the 20 years or however long you finance the bonds. And legal services are here as well. And so we did notice some legal services, such as one trustee's election that had been paid with bond funds, the effect of that, the withdrawal of an ethics opinion, various calls with trustees, and some attorney time which we could not determine if it was really a capital expenditure or an operational expenditure. So for the future, just something to be really careful that the attorneys are, if it is going to be charged to the bond, that you delineate exactly why it's a capital expense. So in some of our other recommendations here, just, again, going over tone at the top, the district is doing many of these things like clarifying their policies and procedures, hiring the new CFO, of course, she's been making great progress, new superintendent as well. So many of these things have already been improved, like I mentioned earlier. But really just encouraging a culture of transparency and accountability is just really important to do. And then, of course, following up on all allegations of fraud or noncompliance and performing independent investigations. So I do want to just really applaud the administration and the board who hired us in the sense to take a look at this and try to provide answers to these things, because they are normal questions that do come up for governments all over the place, where you do just need to find out about certain allegations. Did this happen? Did it not happen? What are the facts? And so that's why we are here for you, and hopefully been able to provide many of those answers and information for the future. So again, I want to thank the trustees, superintendent, executive, administrative assistant. You've been awesome. Everyone here has been great and helpful as far as getting through this work over the past year. And I'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
Well, can I ask Dr. Ross a question? Because it's related to this. I don't think have we posted the internal auditor yet? And if not, what is the expected timeline?
Sorry, I can answer that, Ms. Huddle. So we actually are finalized the position today, and so I talked to HR actually right before this meeting and asked when it would be posted, and we're hoping as early as tomorrow, if not Monday, it will be posted on our website. It did take us a little bit longer just because it is a new position for the state of South Carolina, so we were trying to gather information on existing positions within school districts. We also looked at state internal auditors. We looked at non-governmental internal auditors. So we tried to kind of mesh several job descriptions into one. And then we, of course, wanted to make sure that we got the salary range correct, which we hope that we did. So we will find out when we start getting some applications. But yes, ma'am, hopefully that will be posted no later than Monday.
Ms.
I
Huddle,
have a couple others, but I'll let.
Can I ask a follow-up to that, for that position that's being posted tomorrow or Monday? Where is the district going to post that position? Because I know it's a little bit of a unique position for a school district, and it's a very specific position. So where is that job going to be advertised?
So it will, of course, be on our website, but we have also talked about using some funding for actual paying for advertisements. So that could be, on various websites, the normal kind of ones that you would think of, Indeed, things like that, that we will probably look to post this position because, like you said, it is unique. And right now, the only way you would find it would be, if it were posted tomorrow, the only way you would find it would be on our website. So we do hope to be able to use a little bit of advertising money to actually post it on other websites.
Do we have any other questions, Ms. Hutt? I'm just trying to open it up.
I was going
Ms.
to
Huddle.
So this question is for the auditor. I know in the report you used the example on the temporary help of work kind of between HR and finance. And I was just curious, and I know a lot of the recommendations our CFO has answered to, but correct me if I'm wrong, but some areas like HR and finance, the invoices go first to an operational area to review because they know the most about facilities and maintenance and things like that before they go to finance. And finance is really relying on their knowledge to say whether or not this was right or partly. I guess I just want to make sure that am I correct in that the process improvements don't solely fall on finance? There are some other areas of the district that may need new procedures or training or what have you.
Yes, I would say that's correct. So in general, with any purchase, you're going to want the reviewer signing off who knows that those goods or services were received before it even gets to finance. And in fact, even on the front end before that, making the purchase requisition or purchase order should be approved by those who are knowledgeable about what's being requested, and then that the goods or services were received. So many times, let's say in this case of construction, that may be in the area of facilities, for example, or in the area of temporary substitute services. That could be, the principal who ensures that that person really did work and sign off.
I have one more if nobody else has. Okay, my last question. I know that you sent a letter and an email and you asked the board members to let you know if there were any issues that we were aware of or potential issues. And you don't have to name names, but I'm just curious, did anyone outside of the board recommend to you or say, here's something that you should look at?
Yes. I feel like over the past year, it really has been a team effort with everyone, between the previous CFO, the current CFO, the superintendent has been great. I know there was a consultant involved. I know there were different legal counsels involved, board members, and I know the board has changed some, but I really do see it as a team effort.
Do we have any other questions from board members? All right, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. All right, so do I have any motions? Mr. Hogan?
Make a motion, we can adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion seconded. Any discussion?
I do. Before we adjourn, I just wanted, since she was the board chair when all of this started, we got an email from Jan Hammond, and it's pretty short, so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to just read it. She wrote an email to all of us and said, I wanted to let each of you know how proud I am of LR5 for being totally transparent and having a special called meeting to share the final phase of the procurement audit. Every superintendent should embrace this type of scrutiny. It assures the public that our policies and procedures are protecting every tax dollar. With so many school districts across our state being in the news for wasteful spending, it is a good thing that we have embraced this audit. I look forward to our district using this audit to correct any policies and procedures that need changing and continuing those that are working well. Ensuring our district protects our students and taxpayers should always be a priority. Keep up the good work. Sunshine will only allow our district to grow and prosper. Sincerely, Jan Hammond.
Any other discussion? All right, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor of adjournment? And that is 7-0. We are adjourned.